Hi, my name is Patrick Curtis, CEO and founder of Wall Street Oasis. Thanks for joining us today. We have a great chat with Samay from USC, who ended up getting a role at TD Cowen in New York in the healthcare group. He was super excited. He broke in. I think really his story is just highlights the fact that like being human, being a good conversationalist really does matter in these interviews. He was super late. He hadn't even started really aggressively networking till January, which for all of those in the US know is pretty late for sophomores to be trying to get the junior summer internship. Take a listen in terms of how he turned it around and was able to still get a great offer. Enjoy. All right, Sammy, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Of course, of course.
So I'd love to just give the listeners a short summary bio to kind of start this off, and then we'll kind of dive into your whole process.
All right, so my name is Samay. I'm originally from Alabama, but I ended up coming to school at USC because that was just the best school that I got into. I was originally planning to be pre-med for the first 18 years of my life, but once I got to school, I wanted to explore my passions a little more, and I ended up um, finding finance, and that was what I ended up switching into. And from there, I ended up being interested in, the clubs here, the finance clubs, and that was kind of started my journey into like the finance career world.
Nice. And so did that happen like freshman year, end of freshman year, where you kind of switched a little bit in terms of your passion, or was it more like early sophomore year?
It was actually at the beginning of freshman year. Like after I had gotten into USC, um, it was like I had actually switched major before actually arriving on campus because it
Oh,
was
okay.
much easier to do it that way.
Nice.
Um, because once you're here, you have to take prerequisites and everything and go through a whole transfer process. But if you do it before you actually get here, they just reevaluate your high school application. It took like 3 days.
What triggered that like that switch kind of before you got on campus? Was it like just research, knowing about Marshall and
I
strong?
think it's just that like even throughout my senior year, I've done pretty interested in finance, like not on the IB side of things, but even just like the trading, just the more stock market side of things.
Yep.
And so by the time I'd gotten to applying for college, I had so much stuff on my resume that was just like pre-med related. So I decided to just keep the application as a pre-med application.
Got
But I was already kind of set when I was applying to like get into the school and then transfer to the business school.
Guys, you already kind of knew as you were coming in, like, hey, that's what you wanted. So talk to me about like how you kind of modified and changed things. Because I don't think you came to us till you were sophomore, right? Or like right before sophomore.
Yeah.
So talk to me about like freshman year. What did you do to like get yourself more competitive and start branding yourself away from, you know, med school and towards
Yeah. So we have a couple finance clubs at USC. We have one called the Trojan Investing Society and one called the Global Investment Society.
Mhm.
So first semester at USC, I joined both of those, did like the training programs, DCF modeling, three statement. And then we also had like all these meetings with the other club where they would just like run you through what IB was and it would tell you about the different finance careers and like what they actually do. Because like most people, when they first get into something like banking, they don't actually know anything about what bankers do, right?
Yeah.
So that was kind of what gave me like the information on what these finance careers even were, and also just like the tools to like be kind of competitive compared to like all these other kids who knew they wanted to do this their whole life.
Yeah.
Um,
So you kind of came in, you quickly learned like, okay, I need to do these things. You started taking some modeling courses. You started kind of maybe doing a little bit of interview prep. Um, when did you kind of come across us? Yeah, except from what I remember, you were a little bit later in the process.
yeah,
It was a little bit high stress because I think we had a talk maybe early sophomore year.
yeah.
Is that?
So the thing
Yeah.
was, we have mentorship programs at our school through like like professors, and we have seniors who have already done their internships, and they have like a kind of like big little relationship.
Yeah.
The problem was for my specific year, they changed like the dates of when they run that program.
Hmm.
And usually they do it in the fall and in the spring. But for my year, they just put it in the fall. And then everyone was supposed to apply in the fall. And so I missed the deadline to even apply. So like I was just like, and there was no way I was getting that. And so at that point, it was like, I need some type of mentorship program here. Like,
Yeah.
because like, really the best way to do something like this is just iterative practice. You need mock interviews. You need someone to like who really knows what they're doing, who's done it before, to just kind of get your nerves out, to get how you speak out. rehearse your answers. And so I thought Wall Street Oasis would be a good resource for that. I already had the technical courses, and so I got an email for Wall Street Oasis Academy, because I was like on the subscription list, and I was like, this seems like exactly what I'm looking for. It actually like could be even better because they have all these mentors from actual banks, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so when you kind of first came in, obviously there's a resume review. Did you feel like that was a lot of value, or your resume was already in decent shape? And did you feel like the stuff we did there helped? Because I think coming from USC, I call it like a strong semi-target, right? It's not like super target where they're placing like hundreds of kids every year, but there's
Right.
it's getting stronger and stronger every year. And so I'm curious if you feel like where the most value is had for you inside Academy. Was it like the preparation on the front end to make your resume stronger, so you got more first rounds? Was it the networking that helped you get more interviews that way? Or like, because I know we didn't have like a full year to work with you. We had like really 12 weeks and then recruiting kicked off. So I'd love to hear about that.
I think really the benefit of Academy is just like it really depends on how much you utilize it. Like I feel like my resume was fine, but there's very like high ceiling for what you can get with it because you have unlimited access to these mentors, right? So like if you choose to, you can ask them as many questions as you need, specific questions about their bank, like what team, specific industry related questions for insights you won't be able to get anywhere. And that's where the real value was to me.
Yeah.
Like I remember I had an interview with for Deutsche Bank TMT with like the head of like the whole TMT team, right? And then like there was a mentor who had worked on that exact same team with this said like guy that I was interviewing with, right? And so it's like you can, ask him how his experience was on the team. You can ask him like what type of projects he worked on, things that will just get you like information you can't really get anywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
And
think
really just prepare you for like, the interview.
and so that was like one type of interview. Talk to me a little bit about like your numbers though, because we were kind of starting late. You hadn't super like scaled your networking, I think, from
Yeah.
when I started talking to you. So tell me about like by the time recruiting came around in December or January, did you feel like you were well networked at that point? Like, because I remember we were strategizing like, hey, you got to get a couple. Did you feel like it was more just
I
drops and
I
you converted enough first rounds?
I think I sent my first networking email at the end of January.
Yeah, late. You're really,
Yeah.
yeah,
So like I didn't have a single connection by then, but I just kind of like grinded it out. Like it slowly took me getting the handle of like, cold emailing people. I would go on LinkedIn and like grab their emails with like the 100 IO thing and then like just send them the email, try and like iterate it to make them respond, send it to them. I got a couple of chats off of that, but mostly like the best chats I got were like people who I got connected through the original cold email,
yeah,
and that's where like you really have to be able to like have like lose some of that thick skin and just like ask, even if they're gonna be annoyed. Because
yeah,
sometimes they really will do it if they're like an alumni. And I got connected to some pretty high people like that.
yeah.
Um,
And so do you think that that was like key in terms of you getting first rounds, or do you feel like it would have happened anyways?
I think it was key in terms of getting first rounds. Actually, I think that's like the most important thing in terms of getting first rounds. I feel like networking is like the most important thing in terms of actually getting to the interview,
Yeah.
the first interview. But then I think it doesn't matter at all after the first interview. But it's funny how it works that way. But it's like there's so many applications. Like like they need someone they're gonna recognize or someone that like has had their resume flagged. But after that, they also can't just keep neppling people in 2024. So it's like
Yeah.
it has to be a fair process.
Yeah. And so tell me a little bit about like just once you started, like did you get a lot of first rounds? Since I mean you were kind of late to the game. So you had, like you said, you didn't have like a ton, you didn't have like some kids we talked to, like a lot of our students have done like 70 to 90 calls and they get into like 15 first round interview processes. Like what were your numbers looking like? Or did you get into like 5 first round interview?
I Well, I there were some banks that I got into first round interviews for like 3 different teams. So it's like I don't I'd count that as like and like different locations too.
Yeah.
I'd say I probably had probably 20 to 30 phone calls, and I probably had between like 9 to 11 first rounds.
That's pretty good.
Some of them after I got my offer, I just canceled them, so I didn't actually do them.
Right.
Even some super days, but
So talk to me a little bit about, yeah, just that process. So like you had done what, half of the first rounds, you had two super days or something like that. Like you mentioned the
Yeah.
TD process, like what else? There's obviously the one you ended up at. You want to tell people where you ended up?
Yeah. So I ended up at TD Cowen on the healthcare team in New York.
Nice.
And so honestly, that was like the perfect team for me. Like, I knew from like the start, like when we first had them for our info session, like it seems like the team I want to be on. I think it's a really good culture there. And also like, again, I was pre-med for like most of my life. So like it's great to be on like a healthcare related team. So I don't have to like just throw that entire like passion out of the window.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome, man. Well, super congrats.
Thank
Any
you.
kind of like for the interview preps, you mentioned you're like, that networking is really important to get to the first round interviews. You actually had a pretty good success. If you're getting close to 10 processes, like getting first rounds.
Yeah.
How did you like, how many mocks would you say you did inside academy, outside academy? Like who were you leveraging? Like obviously your
Yeah.
upperclassmen clubs and stuff like that, but then talk to me a little bit about like inside the academy too.
Kind of like sparing with my time because I just didn't have that much. So like I would specifically only reach out for mock interview for like mentors who had worked at a bank I was going to interview at. Other
Yeah.
than that, I didn't have time to like just be doing all 20 of them.
Yep.
Um, but like those specific ones provided a lot of value, right? Because like those give you such insight that you can't get anywhere else. And I would just do my own like research outside of the mock interviews on like every question they might ask, like doing the behavioral prep, like and obviously if you have time, it's better to just keep doing mocks. But on the time crunch I was in, I think like I made the most value of like the interviews that I did.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, like having that insight kind of going into the interview day is a big advantage. Did you feel like, is there any other like tips you would have for people who are starting late and maybe are like looking at this video, like right,
Yeah,
it's December, January, and everything's open.
I
Yeah, what would you suggest they do?
I would say the behaviorals is the hardest part. Like technicals, for my offer, like the technicals for my super day were actually really easy. My first round technicals were actually pretty hard, but then when I got to the super day, the technicals were like the chillest thing ever, and it was pretty much just a vibe check.
Yeah.
Um, and really, that was also my first in-person interview of the whole thing, of the whole process, because that was the only super day I got flown out for. Um, it's really just about practicing your speaking skills more than like building your knowledge. Because like really the knowledge isn't that crazy. Like you
Did
can,
you did you feel like your stories were such that like you had rehearsed them enough where you felt comfortable like delivering them in a way that like so you're not saying you're a hard worker, you're showing them with stories like were you really good at that point at pulling those stories in?
I was not really good. I had at least gotten to the baseline level of like being
Yeah.
able to not just seem like terrible
Yeah.
because that just wasn't something I was good at, talking about myself.
Yeah.
And so at least I'd gotten to the level of where like at least they're not gonna think I'm like just like some super awkward like
Yeah. Yeah.
person
Yeah.
who doesn't know anything about themselves. Like and it helps to have like the actual prompts that like the academy like the
Seven
seven prompts it
words.
gives you. Yeah.
Yeah.
To just like give you something to think about and write about. Because once you have it written down, it's easier to like recall.
Yep. Yep, for sure. Well, that's great. Any other kind of advice to candidates in similar boats or even other people?
I would say definitely, cold emails and all is great. If you do go to like a school that has in-person info sessions, don't miss a single one. Go to everyone. Don't leave early. Stay until you can get some type of conversation with like the representative. Get their business card, because almost always they'll actually respond to your email.
Yeah.
And it's usually like higher ups that'll, come to like there's so many MDs that have come to our school and maybe they won't give me a call, but they'll, loop me in with like some analyst, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then I have an intro already from an MD, right? So
You're
I
getting the
found that,
warm intros. You're getting the warm intros
yeah.
and info sessions. It's big. Do you feel like awkward doing that? Do you feel like it's forced or what? Because I have a lot of questions. I know students inside they can be like, what do I ask them? So
Um,
I know what I give advice for, but what would you say to
I
the
don't think it's awkward. It just feels hard to come up with like you really need to pay attention during the info session because like
yes.
it's really hard to like not seem like you're asking a question that's just like something you should know or just something they've
Pre-rehearsed.
already
Yeah.
stated. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah.
like some random question. Like you really need to have a specific question that you're actually just curious about instead of just asking a question to ask a question.
Right. Yeah, I
And
find
so that
same.
does require actually
That's the
paying
same thing with the
attention.
networking. Like if you have a list of questions, you're going out and you're just like gonna ask the list of questions based on what you prepare beforehand. It's
Yeah,
tends to be very awkward because it's like suddenly you're asking questions out of like left field that make no sense.
yeah.
It's
It's like that.
extremely
That's not how the conversation, like a conversation flows. So you have to be like, it's really just about conversation skills, which,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, well, I'm happy you were able to make it and you had the success you did, even with
thank
some of the
you.
thing with the timing. I remember how stressful it was when we were like
I know.
hours and stuff. So I'm very happy it worked out with for you, and I'm happy you. Thanks for coming on here just to chat and share your story with everybody. Really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thank you so much for having me.
Awesome, Samay.